Rachel Engel of Wrigley and I were on a panel on the use of multiple media, both traditional and new media, in terms of building brands. And what we looked at, it's a particularly interesting case because Wrigley has a whole range of brands that are targeted towards teens. Many of them are very much affinity-driven brands. They're badge brands. They're brands where the teen is going to buy it and pull it out of the purse or pocket if it's a cool brand, if they feel like it's a brand for people like me. And so we're looking at building that dynamic among teens. And not surprisingly, this is one of the areas in which traditional advertising has historically really struggled. How does an advertiser tell a teen that a brand is cool? The teens decide for themselves whether the brand is cool or not. So we took a look at two of the key Wrigley Candies brands, Skittles and Starburst, and we looked at the interaction of different traditional and non-traditional media in terms of the different functions that communications provide: building awareness, building trial, building brand affinity, and so forth and so on. And we started out thinking in terms of three media types. You've got traditional media, you've got online advertising like banner ads and so forth and so on, and then you've got this whole new animal, which is the social networking, like Facebook pages. Skittles has almost 5 million Facebook fans, so that's a huge community of people that get on to Facebook and talk about the brand. So we thought there's these three kinds of advertising, which does what best. We quickly learned that in terms of the performance metrics, that traditional offline advertising and traditional online advertising pretty much function the same way. Whether you're online or offline, if the advertiser is telling the story, there's a certain dynamic that goes on. Whereas the social media networks are a whole different animal because the consumer is creating the story about the brand. So we ended up really looking at kind of the contrast between the two. It's no news that the traditional media, and particularly media like television, have the most success in terms of reaching the broad numbers of people. So maybe Skittles has 5 million Facebook fans, but compared to how many people they can reach with a television commercial, it's still a drop in the bucket. So in terms of generating broad awareness, you need the traditional media. We also find, we use a longitudinal design where you interview the same people at 2 points in time, so we know where these people were in terms of brand attitudes before they saw the advertising and how it changed them. We know that one of the real values of traditional advertising is you can engage people who aren't already brand fans. You're reaching a lot of people, you're maybe telling them something that they didn't know before. In contrast, the branded social media, you got a bunch of people that are already brand fans. So they're, getting on the Facebook page, or they're creating these online communities around the brand because they already like the brand. So you're drawing a broad group of people in with the traditional media, and you're reinforcing fandom, if you will, with the branded social media. That's a key difference between the two. And what it suggests is that the broader media can bring in these maybe unfanned yet people and get them to go onto the social media sites where they're going to be surrounded by a lot of fans. Which brings us to the next thing that branded social media is really good at, which is building brand affinity. If I get on a site and I'm kind of, yeah, Skittles are kind of a cool brand, and everybody's talking about Skittles, it really bumps that sense that this is a cool brand, this is a brand for people like me. The social media do that better than any other media, particularly with these teen audiences. So that's the strength of the social media. The social media also, we found, do a really good job at generating trial. So broad media tell the brand story, they do a better job of communicating brand attributes, again, as you might expect, because the advertiser's controlling the message. Here's what I want to tell you about this brand. It's good tasting, it comes in a wide variety of flavors, whatever those attributes may be. Whereas when people get onto the site, they talk about it, they discuss it, and it actually stimulates trial along with these cool brand perceptions. So we're seeing the broad-based traditional media setting the brand platform, driving people into the social media sites where they can reinforce each other's involvement with the brand in ways that traditional advertising can't do. So it's become a model that Wrigley is now using to provide the framework for really their whole integrated communications program from both a tactical standpoint and a strategic standpoint. You know, what are we going to do with this, and how is each element going to tactically build towards what it needs to do to drive the whole process. And interesting that when I think about trial, both of these brands that we included in this analysis were introducing line extensions in the year that we did this study. So this is actually people talking to other people on the branded media website and going and trying the Crazy Cores line extension or whatever it might be. So the discussions online stimulating trial of maybe a new flavor among people that are already fans of the existing flavor. An extension of that is that Wrigley just recently did a small-scale experiment with running some coupons on their Facebook site, thinking, okay, we know that Facebook has a lot of fans and we want to get them to try this new variety, and we're going to deliver a coupon to get them to do that. You'd think it makes a lot of sense. It was a failure. And what our conclusion is that it was the wrong venue for the advertiser to stand up and give such a blatant sales appeal. This is a bunch of kids talking with each other about what they like about the brand. Excuse me, who invited you to the party? So there's ways that you have to understand how the dynamics are working, and an advertiser jumping in on a fan participatory kind of a venue doesn't work very well. For Wrigley to participate in a conversation on, for example, a Facebook page, they have the campaign for one of their brands. The Starburst brand is a contradictions campaign, and they're running television commercials that have contradictions. Can't think of one off the top of my head, but it's to communicate the kind of yin and yang dimensions of the product. It's hard on the outside, but juicy on the inside, and it comes in sweet flavors and sour flavors, and so they've got all of these contradictions that they're playing out through the creative approach. How that translates to a Facebook page, for example, is that they have a space where you can suggest your own contradictions, and then the different Facebook fans can vote on which they think is the funniest or best contradiction of the day. So Wrigley's stepping in and saying, let's think about the brand in the way we want you to think about the brand, but you get to participate in the discussion between you all, given this kind of suggested framework. I think that's an example, a good example of how Wrigley can participate in a non-intrusive way. We are still in very preliminary stages of understanding the different types of fans and the different levels of involvement that different fans have. We know that the Skittles website, for example, the Skittles fan book page is one of the 4 pages with the most fans on Facebook of brands. So it's huge, and we know based on the participation levels that people aren't just saying, yeah, I'll be a fan, and then never participating again. So we've got high levels of participation. We haven't gotten to the level yet of segmenting the different types of fans. There's been quite a bit of research presented at the ARF this session that talks about influencers and different types of influencers, and I'm thinking that that would be a really interesting next step, is to overlay that understanding of different types of influencers and how they participate on Facebook fan pages and the sort of ROI that can be developed out of the different people. I think that what Facebook is doing, if it were to go away tomorrow, I feel like you've got a level of involvement with the brand that would gradually deteriorate. So you wouldn't see that tomorrow suddenly people stop buying Skittles or Starburst who were buying it before. But what we've been able to generate with this Facebook activity is a level of involvement with the brand that wasn't there before. It hasn't worked as well with venues like Twitter because it's a different dynamic that's going on. It's really this online community, the membership of which self-reinforces, that's working so well that I think, you know, again, if it went away tomorrow, you wouldn't see sales all of a sudden drop off, but you'd really need to find new ways of replacing that level of engagement that we've got with these teenage kids that can't be accomplished through traditional advertising. I can't really say definitively what the best role for Twitter would be versus a Facebook. We concentrated mostly in 2009 on Facebook, and in fact Wrigley was really devoting a lot of resources to that. It kind of made a strategic decision in terms of resource allocation that that was going to be the best potential for them short term, and that they really wanted to focus on that. So they really didn't do a lot with Twitter, and so it would be pure speculation to try to figure out what Twitter could do that Facebook couldn't do, and vice versa. Maybe next year we'll come back with some results on that. Our focus tends to be on the impact of different media within a multimedia campaign. So by extension, we're now looking at, you know, a broader definition of media. But basically, if you think in terms of a longitudinal design where you're interviewing the same people at 2 points in time, and you're comparing their changes on some dependent variable, whether it's product purchasing or brand favorability or whatever, based on whether they've seen the advertising or not seen the advertising, that's really the foundation of everything we do. And so a lot of it has to do with what are the media that are reaching the most people from an engagement standpoint, not reaching the most people from an opportunities to see standpoint, but people who actually engage with that advertising or communications, and what does it do to their attitudes and behavior versus somebody that didn't have that level of engagement. So we're looking at the impact of long-term memory of advertising communications on these dependent variables like brand purchasing and so forth. Yeah, I think that in terms of big picture insights, in looking at overall how advertising works, the biggest loss of potential ROI from advertising is based on not only people who never get around to engaging with the ad, but people who engage with an ad or commercial or campaign and don't link it to the correct advertiser. And this sounds really elementary, but you know, the old John Wanamaker quote about half of your advertising money being wasted, we see that every day, every week, every month in terms of when we quantify what was the impact of advertising among people in market. If they don't get the brand, their attitudes and behavior is not going to change. And there's a lot of ways that today's advertisers using integrated communications approaches can really overcome that, like Wrigley does with the Taste the Rainbow campaign, which has been running for years and years. Even though it's a teen-targeted campaign, they keep refreshing it, and so it's got that brand equity of the Taste the Rainbow, but it's constantly being refreshed and made interesting again. So advertisers really need to think harder about how they can use all of their brand communications tools, both the traditional and the non-traditional, to really get a message about the brand across, not just to, you know, do funny commercials or, you know, get high reach and frequency numbers, but it's got to be all about the brand. And ideally, like with the Wrigley example of, okay, let's come up with some contradictions. You know, even the consumer-generated content has to do with thinking about the brand in ways consistent with what the advertiser is trying to accomplish.